Welcome to the first ever Gentry Gevers show podcast. I am thrilled to be here with my friend, Victor. He is the president and CEO, chairman of the board of Life Issues Institute, pro-life org since 1991. And he's here to talk about all the crazy things that are happening in the world today. So Victor, thanks for coming on. This happened because I recorded my first podcast and it was just horrible. and so we talked that same day or the day after, and I was like, "Hey, you should come on and just basically hash out this same conversation." So thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah, man, it's an honor. I didn't even process all the way that this was the very first one, so it's a high honor to be in the first show, and welcome to all the listeners.
Dude, I think it's gonna be a good show. We're gonna just improve and iterate as we go on. There's been so much stuff that's happened, and this is kind of a cliche throwaway thing to say, but so much stuff has happened in the last couple weeks. I wanted to touch on at least some of them. The big one being Charlie's assassination. Can you you've actually been very, very vocal recently. What do you think this means for the direction of America? Do you think it's going to be more polarizing, or do you think we're going to unify around a common message of freedom and open dialogue?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try to avoid being caught in my own bubble so much and influenced just by the things that I see. I would have hoped when we see something like that it would be a unity moment, where the entire country would come together, like that post 9/11 feel where everybody would come together. We're all Americans. We should be able to universally reject what we saw happen to Charlie, because it was horrific. I mean, that was the worst day ever. That's one of those, you're going to remember that day for the rest of your life. Most of us have not spent that much time crying and praying and on our knees in a very long time. So it was horrible. And I would say anybody with a soul should look at what happened that day and understand that the time has come to pump the brakes. The time has come to kind of cool the temperature, and really the onus for that is on the left. People say it's a both sides issue. Really, it's not. There are people on the right that are problematic, sure. Incredibly rare. It's incredibly rare. I don't care what the ADL says. I don't care what the Cato Institute says. We could break down the methodology of their ridiculous so-called studies if we so chose. They're garbage, though. But what I saw was some people on the left acknowledging, oh crap, maybe I played a role in what just happened, calling somebody a fascist. You can't call somebody a fascist and every other dehumanizing phrase you can come up with for 10 years and then act surprised when somebody carries out what you just said. They've said for years, the only good fascist is a dead fascist. Then they call Charlie Kirk a fascist. Then somebody shoots him. You have no right to be surprised, because that's exactly what you've been essentially advocating for the last 10 years. But that's kind of what we saw, actually, is that they weren't surprised. There was a huge cohort, hundreds of thousands of people on the left who were celebrating it. And so when I see that, Gentry, you and I, we kind of do this sort of stuff. We're in the same general, industry, I guess, as Charlie was. He was a titan compared to any of us. But, you kind of see yourself. You see that and you think, okay, that could have been me in that chair. I would have been having that conversation. And if I would have been brutally murdered in front of the entire world, they would celebrate my death. And so you have to look at that and you have to say, okay, I have a wife, I have a family, I have people that are close to me who these same animals that are mocking, they're mocking Erica, which, my God, how could you do something like that? Erica is such an incredible human being. The way that the Holy Spirit is all over her, not to get all preachy about it, but the Holy Spirit radiates on Erica. She's just been fantastic. But when you see what they're doing to her, mocking her, Destiny, one of the largest streamers on the left, is mocking Erica Kirk, the widow, and he didn't even give it a week. I mean, he was immediately mocking her. Well, they would do the same thing to my wife. They would do the same thing to your wife. Can you unify with that? The answer is no. And so it's a very tricky position for our country to be in, because it's polarizing. I don't know that it has further polarized the nation, but it's exposed how bad it was. because there are those on the left who we have always given them a very charitable interpretation, which is to say that we thought they were being hyperbolic. Like, oh, they're getting a little carried away. I mean, they don't really mean it, right? When they say that I'm a fascist and the only good fascist is a dead fascist, a lot of us have said, oh, well, they're just carried away, right? These are theater kids that are being overdramatic and they don't know how to express themselves, so they're calling me a Nazi. No, they mean it. They actually mean it when they say these things, and they want someone to kill you. Not all of them. I shouldn't be too generic and broad with this, but the people who are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, of which there have been hundreds of thousands, they would celebrate the same if it was you or I, and they mean it. When they tell you who they are, believe them. And so in some ways it's been, the veil has been lifted, and we see how polarized things really were. At the same time, maybe it's just that I'm biased because I see more of that. I'm more online and more in this. There were a lot of people that flocked to churches. So that tells me something as well. There is a revival building, and I'm sure we'll get to that. So, I don't want to be blinded by just focusing on the absolute evil hatred that we're seeing out there, because there's so much of it. But there's got to be a good, God doesn't let martyrs die in vain. So I'm hoping it brings the country together.
I basically fully agree with you. The one thing I would add is that their characterization of the word fascism is just like it doesn't even fit us at all. Like we want more speech. We want to see more debate. We don't want to. We actually want the marketplace of ideas to be flowing, because what that means is all the good ideas are going to rise to the top, right? And I think it does expose the left for what it is. They're not in pursuit of truth. They're in pursuit of, honestly, I don't even know what they're in the pursuit of. They're progressing. They have this like progressive label, and they're progressing towards this. I mean, I call it oblivion, annihilation. And it's kind of crazy. I think though that, and you and I are in a unique position where like we are in the muck all the time, and calling out evil for what it is. And it does get tiring, and sometimes I feel callous, and sometimes I feel numb, but sometimes I'm just like grossed out. I'm like, I have to step away for a little bit. But I don't think we're supposed to we are supposed to report on the good things, and there's been so many people going back to churches. I've been hearing reports of like Bibles being sold out. Like my church here in Charlotte, North Carolina, Freedom House, we had 50 baptisms today at church, which is just insane. Like our services have been packed, but so like there is good that's coming from this. But I don't think we're supposed to not shy away from exposing the evil, because every post, every comment, every little thing that we add to the conversation online, even if it reaches one new person and that person has their mind changed, I call that a win, right? Like Jesus didn't call us to like cower down when stuff got hard. I don't know where this is in the Bible, but I feel like when stuff gets hard, like we're supposed to double down, right?
Absolutely.
My pastor put this well the other day. He's like, how many of you are willing to die for Christ? And then he followed it up with saying, well, that means you're supposed to live for him too, because if you're not living for him, you're not going to be a target. And it put a fire under us. So I think you're right. There is no unifying in the left that we saw after Charlie Kirk, all those videos, and it wasn't just a couple of videos, it was a lot, and those videos were getting a ton of likes, a ton of positive comments. So like we still have a lot of work to do, and to be honest, I'm kind of wrestling with what to do with these people, because we're called to love our enemies and like pray for those who persecute us. But then on the other hand, Jesus did say to knock the dust off your feet when you leave a town that doesn't accept me. So like I'm always going to be praying for America and praying for those people, but I don't necessarily want to waste my time debating them Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, they shot up. Like, I agree with you. We want the free exchange of ideas because sunlight's the best disinfectant. If somebody has a stupid take, I want the whole world to hear it. Like, that's part of the reason we need to share this and expose how sick and demented and vile these people are. Because when the average individual sees this, it's not a hard debate as to who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. You're making fun of somebody who's just assassinated. He leaves behind a wife and 2 children. So I agree. It's one of those very difficult spots. And, I got to be careful about how exactly I say this and what exactly I say. But I am a fighter. That's just who God made me to be. It's in my bones. It's in my blood. Something like this happens, I feel like I got hit by lightning and I'm ready to go charge a hill. So when I see what they did, my immediate response is fight. And it's fight in every single possible applicable definition of the term, and I have to bridle that myself and say, hang on, because if for example Erica can get up in front of the entire nation and say, I forgive you, to that man, what an incredible example of the love of Christ. And so we are called as Christians to love our enemies, to pray for our enemies. At the same time, we also have to understand, and I'm not saying this in the literal sense, though it would apply, I suppose, there's also just war theory that the church has always understood. And there's a time for everything. We know that's in the Bible as well. There's a time for war. There's a time for peace. And so when we see the level of evil, it's a spiritual battle. I don't think anybody can really disagree with that at this point in time in the face of such evil. It really is a spiritual battle. And, the thing with it is, it's difficult because we have to continue the flow of dialogue. We have to continue talking, but they shot up the marketplace of ideas. We went to the marketplace of ideas and we tried to propose our bill of goods, and we said, this is what we think is the good path forward, and they killed Charlie for it. And so, it's kind of like we have to have some level of an adjustment of what our strategy is going forward. My thing is, when you look at just power, even from an amoral perspective, if you just look at the history of human power, the dynamics that follow, when there is no unity possible and you're dealing with an actually evil adversary, you have to not just defeat them, you have to defeat them entirely and salt the earth where they used to be. And so this liberal ideology that we have that's killing people, that's shooting up churches, that's attacking innocent, killing children in schools and stuff like that, calling people like you or me a fascist as a justification to kill us, there's no unity with that person. I pray. My prayer as a Christian, and perhaps I'm wrong. If so, I hope God convicts me of it. But my prayer is first for them. I want them to have a true road to Damascus moment. I want them to realize, holy cow, I am on the wrong side of God and the wrong side of history, and do a 180, give their life to Christ. We've seen radical Paul. We've seen radical examples of that all throughout the Bible and all throughout, human history. I want them to have a road to Damascus moment. If they're not willing to have, if they have hardened their hearts, like we saw in the Exodus, Pharaoh had his heart was hardened. If they have hardened their heart, my prayer for them is that they would have the full and final wrath of God, and that they would get justice from God. Vengeance is the Lord's, and that should be a terrifying thing for them. There should be a healthy fear of the Lord in their lives, and if they don't have it, there will come a day where they will.
Well said. I think we clip that and put that out. Like we have to. I think that the strategy has to change. I think it's going to be like theaters and stadiums now instead of open air. I think it's up to the people who are pushing on social media to not shy away from followers and likes, and because the bigger our microphone is, the quicker we can get our ideas out there. I mean, I've listened to some of these podcasts that Charlie's staff has put out. Tyler Boyer on Alex Clark podcast the other day said that Charlie knew the power of celebrity, but he didn't want to be one for a long time. And his team convinced him that celebrity was one of the things that could propel the ideas of America and the Constitution and God's word out to, and as we're seeing now, nations, right? I think Alex Colvette said that there's 198 people, 198 countries that have inquired about Turning Point, which is insane. But I think it's our responsibility now to grow the following, get the microphone as big as we can, fill theaters and stadiums and rooms with no buildings. Okay, here's a story. I was golfing yesterday, and one of the guys we got paired. One of the guys we were golfing with, he used to work for Blackwater, so private military. He was in the military for a long time, and then went to private military. And we were talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination because he's a huge patriot, and he was saying that when he saw the video, like, he knew exactly what had happened, and he knew that because there were so many buildings there that, like, of course, it's one of those, like, opportune or negligent moments that, I mean, shouldn't have happened. Yeah. I don't know. I'm torn up about this. I've cried for the last, like, 2 weeks since he left us. It's been such a hard. I've taken this really hard, man.
Yeah, I think everybody has, and I think it was Frank Turek, which I have so much respect, I should say, for Frank Turek. He's fantastic. Fantastic Christian apologist. He was there. Personal friend of Charlie's. Love that guy. He's just amazing. And he does a whole, he runs Cross-Examined, is what it's called, a great organization. And he does a speech that he gives that's If God, Why Evil, that he does. And so he did one about the topic of Charlie having been assassinated. And I think it was in that talk that he mentioned that everybody he talks to feels we all have mourned the death of Charlie as if it was a brother, like an actual friend or a family member. I've lost friends and family members, as you have, as everybody has. And it's been a long time since something has hit me that hard. And that sounds maybe bad for, like, my family members, but something about what happened to Charlie, maybe the manner of it, the public execution, the celebration that happened afterward, devastating. I mean, absolutely, completely gut-wrenchingly devastating. But Frank talks about that, about how we all feel as though we lost a family member. And it's, some people have scratched their heads and they're like, why? Like, I never even met the guy. For a lot of people, they never met him. And they think, how does this feel? It's a testament to the caliber of the man. We know what we lost when we lost Charlie. And it sucks Earthside. Heaven rejoiced. They got, Charlie's up there. So Earthside, it just really sucks, though, because we lost a Titan. We lost a one of one, somebody who's never going to be replaced. I hate when I see people say, oh, this person's going to be the next Charlie. Or no, they're not. There's never going to be another Rush Limbaugh. There will never be another Charlie Kirk. These are legendary men that were one of one. There's going to be other legendary men that are one of one, but there will never be another Charlie Kirk. It simply is not going to happen. The encouragement is, we know where he is. If you're a believer, you have the peace and the hope that can only be had through Christ. We know where Charlie is. We know he was received with the greatest words that you could ever hope to hear, which is, well done, my good and faithful servant. And anyway, yeah, it's tough. But the encouragement that I've had, and the thing that's given me a bit of peace, is there is no martyr that ever died in vain. When I, just being totally honest, when that happened, I was praying my freaking heart out, as I'm sure many people. I was in a hotel. I was on a work trip, and I'm in D.C., and I had gotten the news that Charlie had been shot, but, we kind of all assume it's Charlie. He's going to live. He can't die. It's Charlie. And so I'm back at my hotel, and I'm just praying. I'm literally on my knees praying for him. I'm crying, and so I get the word that after like 2 hours like this, I don't know, it felt like an eternity or whatever, that Charlie had passed away. And that immediate first thought is, God, why would you let that happen to Charlie? Like, he was the best of us. Charlie was a good man. He was a faithful man. He was spreading the gospel. That's my human. A lot of people have that same feeling. Like, that's a good man. I know that all have fallen short of the glory of God. We've all sinned. We all need. Charlie was not Jesus or anything like that, but he was, as far as we're concerned, that was a good man. Like, that was a really good man. And the thing that I just have to keep coming back to is, so were all of the people from the early church that were killed. I mean, the gospel would not have spread without them. Stephen was stoned to death. He was the first martyr of the New Testament. Why did that happen? God has a plan that far exceeds our understanding. Gentry, I play a lot of chess, and so this is an analogy that makes sense to people who play chess. It's like if I was to play a game of chess with Magnus Carlsen, who is the single greatest chess player probably in history, him or Bobby Fischer. If I was to play a game of chess with the single greatest chess player that has ever lived, there will come a time where he makes a move that I for real don't understand. I'll look at that, I'll think about it, I'll analyze the move for 20 minutes. I'm not going to understand why he made that move, but I will know he made it for a reason. And I'll know that that reason's better than the one I would have come up with. So if that's true of me playing a game with Magnus Carlsen, how much more true is it of God Almighty, the only omnipotent one who knows everything from beginning to end, every possible outcome, every possible... He knew when Charlie, when that happened, he knew that there would be literally, I believe it's been millions of people who turned back to God. And if you would tell Charlie, I didn't know him that well, you probably knew him better than I did, but I know him by his work. And I would say, if you could have told Charlie, hey, this is what's going to happen to you, but 2 million people are going to accept Christ, he would do it 10 out of 10 times. There's no question. That's why he was a martyr, because he was such a great man. So it's extremely hard for us on this side. I just have to take a level of comfort in knowing that I may not know what's going on. God does. God knows what he's doing. He's not making mistakes, although it hurts on this end.
That's very well put, because I've gotten hundreds, if not over 1,000 DMs of people saying, I've gone back to church because of Charlie. I've bought Bibles because of Charlie. And then now I'm getting DMs of people saying, like, I've forgiven because of Erica, which is incredible. I think I don't know if you saw this, but Cam Higbee posted a video yesterday, and he says that he considers himself a Christian.
I did. I was so happy. I was so happy to see that.
I texted with him last night, and I was over the moon. I was like, I've been praying. A ton of people have been praying. Like, this is such a good thing, and he's so new to it. And I think the video that he put out was actually really good, because he's like, I don't know what this means, but I'm gonna figure it out, because there is something bigger. And I don't know. I'm super excited for him. Going back to the point, though, there isn't going to be another Charlie Kirk, and because I've been thinking about this a lot, because a lot of my friends are like, "Oh, you're up," and I'm like, "That's really kind of you guys to say," and they believe in me, but I don't think there's going to be another Charlie Kirk, who is an incredible debater, wonderful orator, probably one of the best preachers that I've ever heard, a political strategist, an organizer, a executive, a fundraiser. I mean, this guy he was like the Swiss Army knife of everything that it meant to be great. And so I have been thinking about this a lot. And what I've decided is that, and this applies to everybody, you need to be the version of yourself that Christ wants you to be, because that's who Charlie was. And sometimes that means going to your school board meetings. Sometimes that means, becoming a better husband or father or mother. Sometimes that means going on stages and speaking. Sometimes that means, running for office. Sometimes that means pushing the cart back into the little thing. Sometimes that means not driving like an idiot. If we were just a little bit more bold and we all focused on getting a little better every day, we could become the version of ourselves that Christ wants us to be.
Well, the word bold that you just said, that's the word. That's what my encouragement is to myself, but to every single person out there. You bring up a good point that there will never be another Charlie, in that he was uniquely gifted with everything. Like, people see the clips and they think he was a good orator, or they think he was a good debater, or he was a really compelling speaker. These are three independent skill sets. Most people don't realize that they might be connected. They're not the same, though. You can be a great debater, terrible speaker. You can be a great orator, terrible debater. Charlie had a unique comment. Just those three, you're going to have a very hard time finding somebody who can do that. That was just what we saw in the clips, though. There was the organizational side of it, which is unbelievable. I mean, that is unreal. He ran a $100 million organization. That's insane. That's completely insane. His work ethic was like, I don't know how the guy slept. I mean, it's just, I think of the stuff that he does, and I'm like, Charlie, how? I don't do a fraction of this, and I'm thinking, okay, this guy was about it. He meant business. He worked. In those 31 years, he worked more than people would in 90 something years. I mean, just crazy. But so many of those skill sets, we might each individually have a little piece of that we can do, and that's the encouragement. There's not going to be one person who will be the next Charlie. There's going to be a million people who pick up a little piece, because we see like the memes and stuff where it's like super touching, where it's who's going to pick up the mic, who's going to pick up that microphone. And it's not that somebody's going to pick up this one big giant Herculean microphone. It's going to be a lot of people picking up really little ones and going to their school board or going to, and that's where sometimes you have people, they want to get involved in politics and they're not sure how to. And maybe this is a really good thing to talk about right now, because there's so many people mobilized for the first time ever. Maybe it could be the first time in years. They want to do something. They saw what happened. They're not going to sit idly by. They're done being silent in their faith. They're done being silent in anything. But sometimes we idolize and kind of like romanticize DC, and we think, well, to do anything I have to be president, or to do anything I have to run for Congress, or I have to be like a senator or something like that. No, you don't. You can have the most tangible and, by the way, encouraging results that you're ever going to find in your local town, school board, in your municipality. You have so many things that you can touch people. Your church, start there. My goodness, start in the church. And going back, though, to your word bold, we have to be bold. The time has come for a new era. The time has come for a new response, a new kind of Christianity, a type of conservatism that has a foundation in boldness. Not just saying, oh, well, I don't want to post that. That might offend somebody. I don't want to, I don't want to ruffle any feathers that might upset somebody at the school board meeting or something like that. No, be bold for truth. Make sure your real foundation is truth. But then after that, be bold in that truth. That's what Charlie did. And if we want any hope, it's got to be what we all do, because losing Charlie is a really big L. That's really bad. Like, it's really, really, people don't understand. Like, we're all excited that people are getting engaged. That's awesome. Losing him is really bad. And so we have to be sober about that's horrible. There's a reason they killed him. They knew how effective he was. It's really bad that we lost him. And so it's going to take a lot of people giving 110% just to sustain what that one guy did. And so that's an encouragement to you, me, and the listener as well. If you've ever thought, maybe I could do this, maybe I could run for this, maybe I could influence my church, influence my pastor, influence my friend, maybe I could just raise my kids, a little more intentionally, do it. Boldly do it.
Well, and we have the secret sauce that built the West, built America, the Constitution, capitalism, faith. I mean, even that faith piece, like if you're a Christian and you're listening to this, you have some of the greatest news that could save someone's life and help them get into eternity. So why would you stay silent about that? Why there's so many dystopian books, and one of the things that I've been doing too recently is going back through all of Dennis Prager's fireside chats, because that's what Charlie listened to. And so I'm like, okay, I got to get better. I got to sharpen it. But he goes through all these dystopian books like Brave New World, 1984, kind of the classics. And I think that those books were obviously a warning of what could happen, or maybe like a sick fantasy of what could happen. But that won't happen if we're all just a little bit more bold. And I think the left is having a heyday right now because they're open and bold about their ideas, and their ideas suck. They lead people to destruction. They get people stuck on, hooked on drugs, alcohol, sex with whoever you want. And that might sound great, but it's not a very fulfilling life. Plus, they want to centralize power around the government, and the government is so inefficient. And they want to get everybody on government benefits. Ultimately, what they want to do is universal basic income, which kills incentives, and we're not going to see like all these great inventions like we could. Here's a great example. We have one of the greatest tools in the entire world coming out in the last couple of years called large language models, AI, ChatGPT, Grok, Anthropic, Gemini, and these tools are spectacular. You can build anything, code anything, write anything. It can do so much stuff. But the marketplace of ideas, which is what you and I are in, we're talking about it, what is a woman? We're talking about this stupid things. But that's what colleges are talking about. They're like gender studies this and oppression that, DEI, and all this kind of bogus stuff, when we have Elon Musk is one of the greatest inventors of all time right now, and people hate him because he donated money for Trump and campaigned for him on Twitter. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, we are on the verge of, another industrial revolution, tech revolution. I don't even think we have a word for it yet. Another, marketplace revolution. And we're arguing about gender. Their ideas suck. And our ideas are great. Our ideas are the ones that they really are. They've built companies. They've kept families together. They give us the freedom of speech, freedom to bear arms, a ton of freedoms against the government. And we have to be bold about these ideas. We can't just sit back and just be like, listen, Aunt Connie doesn't like these ideas. Uncle Evan doesn't like these ideas. So I'm not going to say them out loud. No, you have to be bold, because the left is having a heyday because we've been silent. They don't know how many of us there are. They don't.
Well, no, they have absolutely no idea. The other thing is, you brought up how stupid some of these things that we're having to talk about are. That's fun. The left will oftentimes say, why are conservatives often talking about bathrooms? Why do conservatives care so much about girls' sports? Why do conservatives care so much about all these things? The truth of the matter is, we care about all sorts of stuff. We have great ideas, like what you were just talking about. We're talking about the things that built the West. We are not on some crusade to talk about bathrooms as much as we possibly can. We're not out here trying to investigate genitalia. That's really not our wheelhouse point of interest. The reason we're having these conversations is because a bunch of morons on the left are forcing an issue. And they're saying, this is our hill to die on. And so the left is trying to just torpedo this stuff, kamikaze our culture with the dumbest things that we've ever heard. And so we do have an obligation to stand up against that. For one, as Christians, we have an obligation to stand for the truth. Sometimes people get caught up, well, that's not very loving of me. It's not very loving if I, say, hey, that this is a mental illness, for example, with transgenderism and gender dysphoria and transvestites and all that. That's not very nice. That's not very loving. Love requires truth. You don't love somebody by lying to them. There's an old phrase, and I forget which preacher says it, but the last thing you want to do is love someone to hell. The last thing that you want to do is just be so unwilling to share the truth with them that you don't share the gospel, that you don't share what the actual structure that God made and ordained, that they're trying to actively undermine. So I would much rather talk about just about anything else. I'm much more happy to talk about the foundational things that built the West than I am to talk about your potty breaks and where you like to go to the bathroom. I think I've solved this issue, by the way, the issue of where do they go to the bathroom, because they put themselves in a pretty odd situation. If you've kind of become convincing and you look kind of like a man, it's going to be awkward to go into the women's restroom. Fair enough. Go potty outside like a dog. That you created the situation for yourself. This is a nightmare of your own Frankenstein creation. Go potty outside like a dog. You can get a bell on the door. We can ring it for you when you want to go. But it's not the burden is not on the rest of society. Go potty outside. It's my take.
I like that idea. One of my friends, way back in 2020, so way before I red pilled him, they were asking me well, why does it matter so much? Why don't you just let him go? And then I explained a lot of trans people are actually sexual deviants and they get off by doing this. And so oh, well, that makes sense. Why don't we just have a third bathroom? And I was like, okay, cool. Let's say that idea is viable. do you want all the buildings now for the rest of time to have a third bathroom? Do you want to go redo the bathrooms in current buildings on all the floors? Like that is going to be, and then you have to get like another, maybe you have to get another permit. You have to get the government involved in that. Like,
and who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, who's going to pay for it? The building's going to pay for it? No, dude. Buildings are already so expensive.
Well, and the other thing that people don't think about is, say we do that, somehow we get the logistic. Like, some building, it's not possible. Like, it's literally not going to be possible to put a third bathroom in some buildings because it's just the pipes don't work. You can't put that many extra bathrooms in. That's building code. So you do have like massive logistical issues. But let's say that we iron out the logistics of putting a third toilet in every bathroom. You know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you cannot give, it's the old kids book, you give a mouse a cookie. You cannot give a mouse a cookie because the second that you normalize it and you say, okay, all right, we'll give you your own potty, you get your own bathroom, they're going to say, okay, great, for about 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, they're going to turn around and they're going to say, this is segregation. You're making me use the black water fountain. You're making me use the water fountain or the toilet for the black people, except now it's going to, because that's what they always wanted to frame themselves as if this is like a second civil rights movement. No, that's not. So if we give the mouse the cookie, he's going to call us a racist and say that we're segregating him because he has to poop in a different toilet. They want your toilet. They want to beat you into submission. Their interest is not what's logistically most feasible. It's beating you into submission until you reject reality. That's one of the reasons this is such an important. It's very symbolic, this issue of like the whole trans thing. Because if you can get society to be beaten into submission about one of the most basic biological truths that God, Genesis says, he made a male and female. This is a biblical truth. It's a scientific truth. If you can get people to spit in the face of common sense, to spit in the face of reality on the issue that's most fundamental, what will we stand up against, right? If they can convince me that a 6'5" man should be able to use the bathroom with, a 5-year-old girl, what am I going to stand up against? Let's be honest. I mean, we've lost the plot if we are a society that will reject reality that thoroughly. That's why I joke and I say go potty outside. You get nothing.
Well, the other thing too is that and I think you even brought this up before. It's not the loving thing to do. It's not the Christian thing to do. Well, I actually don't agree with that at all from the basis of, for our relationships, there's a hierarchy, right? My number one goal in this life is to protect my wife and my daughter who's coming in a couple months, right? And then it's to protect my family and then my friends and then my community. I don't think that it's even in like the top 5 hierarchy to love somebody into like that and accept somebody into that lifestyle. And the statistics are overwhelming that these people are just strange, weird people. And I don't want to subject my wife or my daughter to that. And so I love my wife and my daughter who's coming way, 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 way more than that group of people. And that's normal. Like that hierarchy should be normal. And that's the other thing that the left is trying to like destroy is that hierarchy, family unit, community. I think COVID really did a number on community. Like people are so antisocial now. I'm so antisocial now. And I don't like it. I really don't.
Yeah, it did a number on a lot. It did a number socially speaking. We're seeing already the conservatives were ridiculed for this when we said, hey, maybe taking kids out of school in their like fundamental years, or hey, maybe putting a mask over their face while they're developing intersocial relationships and like facial cues, nonverbal communication strategies. Maybe that's going to have really negative impacts on their education long term. We're seeing that play out, like really bad educational responses. The other thing is it really hurt the church, COVID did, where that community, people got really used to watching church from their bedroom and sitting in their pajamas and just turning church on TV. I get that's like super tempting. And sometimes, maybe you're not feeling good. It's nice to have that as an option. You could turn it on without getting grandma sick. You might not want to go in person and get a bunch of old people sick. I can appreciate that. But This loss of community is devastating. It's even biblical that we're supposed to gather with other believers. That's very much something we're supposed to do. But the church attendance in many cases did not recover after COVID, and that's a shame.
Well, and I've seen this argument all the time that you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. And they're technically right. Like you don't have to. But my appeal and I just know that church has added so much value to my life because of the great teaching in person, live. It's way different going to an event versus watching it online, right? All the political stuff. If you've ever been to a Trump rally, it's way cooler being there in person than watching it online. So there's that. There's the community. You gotta build really cool friendships. Like my wife and I, we have a bunch of couple friends that are all having babies or had babies recently, and we're just gonna raise our kids together. And it's gonna be the greatest thing because they love God, they love America, they have an emphasis on community. Like they like sports and all this kind of stuff. They're also very into politics too, so that doesn't suck. But like there's so much value that you can have that you can get from church, and then giving to church. It doesn't have to even be money, although we are called to give. But like I volunteer on the parking team at church, and those parking guys it's rain or shine, and it's kind of fun. It's like a little brotherhood. It's like a sports team that like I kind of miss just from like high school and college. So like there's so much good stuff. Plus like all the small groups, and you have like people to go to dinner with and lunch with and build relationships with and just talk and have fun and laugh. And some of my best friends in recent years have come from going to church. And so I would encourage people to do that, especially if you're looking for something to do and you don't really know where to start. If you're going to a church for the first time too, I think this is important. Always go up to, at my church it's called the Next Steps bar, but it's the Connect bar. It's whatever. Most churches have this, and they'll plug you into a small group. They'll typically introduce you to one of the leaders in the church, and so you can start to make some friends, because it is intimidating to go to a church and not know anyone.
It's hard.
It's kind of scary, actually.
It's hard. And then it's also hard. So this is something my wife and I have struggled to find a good church down here. So I'm a Missouri boy. I was born and raised like St. Louis area. I had an amazing church, absolutely amazing. It's Roots Church off Interstate 44. Great people, good biblical teaching. Talk about boldness, courage. That pastor had it. You know, he wasn't afraid to talk about certain issues. I have become, and maybe this is something I should pray about. I have, I've just become very disappointed in a lot of pastors who are afraid to touch on things that are biblical, things that the Bible has called them to speak about, that they refuse to, because it's my opinion that many of them are more afraid of offending their congregation than they are of offending God. And so they won't talk about Pride Month, or they won't talk about Charlie being shot, or they won't talk about, we have no shortage of threats to the flock. If the pastor is the shepherd and a wolf has entered the pen and the pastor won't address it, he's a bad shepherd. You're a bad shepherd if you're not willing to talk about the things that are threatening your flock. So there are a lot of people, pastors that have never spoken about abortion, pastors that have never spoken about LGBTQAI+, pastors that have never spoken about the political rot that's happening in our country. Because if you care about the most important thing, right, if you're a believer, the most important, we have the Great Commission, go and make disciples, share the gospel. That's first and foremost. But the second most important thing as an American is to protect the right to share the gospel. And so if you want to be able to share the gospel, you need to be involved in politics. I hate this thing. I'm not interested in politics. Yeah, well, it's interested in you. It's interested in you, and it's interested in your family and your kids and your church and the world that you're going to grow up in. And if you want to be able to share the gospel, you darn sure better care about what happens in this country. The First Amendment, yeah, that's pretty relevant, my friend, when it comes to what's happening. But I've bounced, and I hate to be a church hopper. I hate it. I think that's one of the big pieces of advice is get planted in a church and grow in it. Stay in that church, become involved, like you said, serve the church if you have the opportunity to do that. That's fantastic. But it's been hard, and so to anybody else who's experiencing a similar thing to me, it's hard to find a church sometimes because you have pastors that are weak and they're cowardice. And I hate to use that phrase, but it's the only word I know. Weak, cowardly men. I will not be led by a weak, cowardly man. I need somebody that at least is going to stand on business and as a man of God say, hey, I'm going to tell you what it is, and you can bring your Bible and we can have a conversation about it if you disagree with me. That's what it should be. And there's been a lot of pastors that have failed. So it's an encouragement, for one, to the congregants to continue looking. It's hard. It kind of sucks sometimes to continue trying to have to find a good church. But a word of encouragement to the pastors. Be bold, man. Like we talked about earlier, be bold, be courageous, because especially our younger generation is looking for truth. They're looking for boldness. They're looking for people who have courage. The pastor should not be getting his courage from the congregation. The congregation should be getting their courage from the pastor. And so if you're a pastor and that's not you, pray about it. Pray about it. Go have a long look in the mirror. Because if you want full churches, the era of meekness, the era of tiptoeing around people's feelings and not offending, this group, not offending that group, it's over. You're going to end up with a dead church one day. And you're going to wonder, how did this happen? I tried so hard not to offend anybody. Well, you offended the Lord because you weren't willing to address the lion that just walked in and was ravaging all of the sheep in your flock. You were a bad shepherd. That's what happens. And I hate to say that because it's like, in a way, who am I to say this? Our Catholic friends would be like, don't say that. I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't disagree. I don't want to represent Catholic theology, but they might be like, Victor, you need to submit to your authority. I don't know.
No, I think it's fair to call out people like that. Here's something on the other side of that too. There was a church in Seattle that had a politics night. They called Apologia, and they brought Eric Metaxas out. And this is in Seattle, like the heart of Seattle. So I went there. I was really excited to hear Eric talk. And the pastor, who had been a pastor, he was like 60 years old, something like that, old guy, gray hair, probably very wise, pastor of the church for a long time. I can't remember his name, but he got up there and he said, by the way, guys, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten out there, and I should have gotten more politically involved sooner, and now I'm doing it. And I was stoked. And everyone in the room, you could feel the room like change and get more engaged. And there is power in an apology. So if you don't know where to start, Pastor, maybe start by apologizing. And because that could mean the world to people, because you don't want to get your theology and biblical teaching from influencers, please. Because if they, or you're like, okay, I'm going to say this again because I said it wrong. If pastors aren't talking about politics, they're going to go to social media about politics. And you don't want to get politics from the influencers' worldview. Victor and I know the influencers. They do like a good job, net positive, but a lot of them don't have a strong Christian worldview. Some of them do, and they're great. And those people should have 1 million followers. But you also, as a pastor, like don't want to be that shepherd and be like, listen, I'm going to give you food, but not water. You can go find water somewhere else.
Well, and if as the congregation, if the pastor doesn't speak on it, where are they going to get their idea from? Like, where are they going to, because this is sad, but it's true. Many Christians are not opening their Bible. It's very unfortunate. But if you're not open, and that's just the reality, pastors need to get on them about that too. And myself included, I need somebody to be, get on it, because I need to be reading my word more.
I think some of these pastors need to open their Bibles too.
Yeah, I would say so. And the other place, by the way, this is going to be offensive to some people. The other place to not get your Christian theology is in modern Christian worship music. I'm not saying that to be like a Debbie Downer about a lot of Christian worship music. I think it has a great place. There's some banging, so like great, biblical songs. There's a lot of stuff though that like you turn on Christian radio that's just songs, and it's like you'd be hard pressed to make those lyrics line up with the actual Bible. Like there's stuff in a lot of these songs where it's like, well, that's actually not quite a great representation of the character of God. So sometimes people get this very like Jesus is my boyfriend vibe from worship music at times. That's bad theology. You get the very bad theology because you have a whole class of American Christians who think that the cardinal sin, almost like the unforgivable sin, the biggest, most awful, deadliest sin of all is to judge somebody. And they get some of this, you get some of that attitude from like Christian worship music, and you get some of that like Jesus is just my boyfriend and I get to do whatever I want. And that is, I got to be very careful about the way I say that because I don't want to paint a very broad picture of all, because there, like I said, there's some really, really, really great modern worship songs, but just be in your word. Get your theology from, maybe not the internet, maybe not songs, because sometimes it's a great song, but it's don't forget, we're talking about the same God that blew up Sodom and Gomorrah and flooded the earth and had the Canaanites completely destroyed. So, and there's a lot we see. First John talks about a lot of good ways to tell if somebody's a believer or not. We see in the letters from Paul, people were kicked out of the church. And that's crazy. So like if you read the letters of Paul to the early church, and I forget which church it is. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. Where there was sexual immorality, and there were people sleeping. I believe it was like with their mothers or something. It was like men sleeping with their stepmothers, or it was really horrible. It was this most like debaucherous. It was this insane sexual immorality, and they refused to repent. They refused to acknowledge that what they were doing was wrong. Paul literally says, kick them out of the church. Kick that person out of the church. If you were to go and say that to a lot of modern Christians, hey, this person is unrepentant in their sin. We've addressed it to them as we're called to do as a brother in Christ, and they are unrepentant and they are proud and boastful in their sin. Kick them out. Kick them out of the church. If you were to say that, you would get so much flack from the influencer Christian culture and a lot of the like Bible verse in the bio kind of stuff. They would come down on you so hard because that's judgmental, and you're not supposed to. That's the number one thing in the entire New Testament apparently, is that you're not allowed to judge, much less where it says to judge righteously. But that's a different conversation for a whole other day. That's theology that goes above my head on some of it, so I won't pretend to be an expert on all of it. But it's like, man, we have a lot of work to do in the church. I guess that's what I'm getting at. We have a lot of work to do in the church, and that's me as well. Like I look in the mirror on that. I have a gigantic laundry list of things that I need to be working on in my life, but don't get your theology from songs either. Some of the old-timey songs are good. They're like great. You could feel the gospel power in some of those old songs. And, that I don't know. That's a whole nother, that's a rant, that's a tangent. Anyway.
That's funny. I will say, though, that churches are made up of people, and so they're never, ever going to be perfect. And if you do find a perfect church, leave, because you're not perfect. Oh, man. Well, Victor, this was great. I appreciate you coming on to the very first episode of the Gentry Gevers show. Where can people find you if they don't know who you are? I'm sure they do, but...
Well, you can find me anywhere. Just search up my name. If you're wanting the exact handle, it's Victor Nieves, Nieves. It's Victor Nieves. The Victor Nieves Show on all podcast platforms, and I think I'm on every social media by now. So if I'm not, let me know. But I think I'm on all of them. So it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.